Get your hands off the wheel before I break them. Officer Dawson ripped Marcus Ward's door open, metal shrieking as he dragged him onto the gravel shoulder. Riker shoved him forward, his palm crushing the back of his neck as he muttered, "Old men like you don't belong behind the wheel of cars like this." Dawson's taser buzzed inches from him, the electric snap louder than the passing traffic. "Don't look away," he hissed, gripping his chin. "I want you to remember who owns this road." When he cocked his fist to strike, Marcus's punch connected first, sharp and explosive, freezing every witness mid-breath. None of them knew they just swung on a retired Delta Force commander. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. Commander Marcus Ward eased his SUV down the winding Georgia highway, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows through the pine trees. The drive from his daughter's house usually brought him peace, a rare moment of quiet after decades of classified missions. But today, something fell off. In his rearview mirror, 2 patrol cars have been following him for the past 15 minutes, hanging back just enough to make their presence known. His trained instincts kicked in as he maintained a steady speed, hands relaxed but ready at 10 and 2 on the steering wheel. The cruisers suddenly accelerated, their engines roaring as they split apart, one cutting in front while the other boxed him in from behind. The lead car swerved sharply, forcing him to brake hard. His SUV lurched to a stop on the shoulder, gravel crunching under the tires. "Keep your hands where we can see them." Deputy Dawson's voice boomed through a megaphone. He emerged from the lead car, hand already on his holster. Deputy Riker approached from the other side, his face twisted in a sneer. Marcus lowered his window just 3 inches, enough to communicate but maintain protection. "Is there a problem, officers?" Dawson's face reddened as he stormed up to the window. "When an old man like you drives a car this nice, it's stolen. Get out before we remove you ourselves." His jaw tightened, but he kept his voice steady. "This is my vehicle. I have registration. Did I ask you to talk?" Dawson grabbed the door handle, yanking it open. "Out. Now." Years of combat training screamed at him to react, but Marcus forced himself to move slowly, deliberately. He stepped out with his hands raised slightly, his military-honed senses cataloging every detail. Dawson's aggressive stance, Riker's position behind him, the third officer now approaching from the backup car. "Face the vehicle," legs spread. Dawson grabbed his shoulder, shoving him hard against the SUV. The impact knocked the breath from his lungs. "This is unnecessary," he stated calmly. "I'm a retired military officer." Riker's knee slammed into his ribs, cutting off his words. "Shut your mouth. You people always have excuses." The search was nothing more than an excuse for brutality. Rough hands patted him down with intentional force, lingering inappropriately. Marcus's combat instincts flared with each violation, but he remained still, analyzing their positions, waiting. "Not so tough now, are you?" Dawson twisted his arm behind his back, pushing it up until pain shot through his shoulder. "Time to learn some respect." The third officer circled around, cracking his knuckles. "These types never learn respect until you teach it to them." Marcus felt the cold metal of a taser press against his neck. Dawson's breath was hot on his ear as he growled. "Maybe this will help the lesson stick." "You really don't want to do that," he said softly, his tone carrying a weight of absolute certainty. Dawson laughed. "Oh yeah? Watch me." The taser crackled to life. In that instant, everything changed. Before the electrodes could make contact, Marcus moved. His elbow shot backward with crushing force, catching Dawson in the solar plexus. As he doubled over, Marcus pivoted, using his momentum to throw him face first into the SUV's hood. Riker lunged, reaching for his baton. Marcus dropped low, sweeping his legs out with a practiced move that sent him crashing to the asphalt. The third officer charged in, but Marcus was already moving. He caught the wild punch, redirected the energy, and sent him flipping over his hip. He landed hard, the impact driving the air from his lungs. Dawson staggered up, blood streaming from his nose. He grabbed for his weapon, but Marcus was faster. 2 precise strikes, one to his wrist, another to his knee, left him howling on the ground. Riker tried to get him in a chokehold from behind. Marcus responded with fluid efficiency, gripping his arm and throwing his weight forward. Riker flew over his shoulder, landing on the hood with a heavy thud that left a deep dent in the metal. The third officer had managed to get to his feet, but the fear in his eyes showed he knew he was outmatched. He rushed Marcus anyway, driven by desperation and wounded pride. Marcus met his charge with controlled violence, a combination of strikes that left him sprawled beside his colleagues. In less than 30 seconds, all three officers lay groaning on the pavement. None had managed to land a single effective blow. Marcus stood straight, his breathing calm and measured as the sound of approaching sirens filled the air. He didn't run. He didn't hide. He stood his ground, knowing this confrontation was far from over. The wailing sirens grew louder, but he remained perfectly still, his military bearing evident in every line of his posture. Dawson tried to push himself up, spitting blood onto the asphalt. You're going to regret this. No, Marcus replied quietly, watching the first backup units appear on the horizon. I'm not the one who's going to have regrets about today. The sun was sinking lower now, painting the sky in deep oranges and reds. The same Georgia highway that had promised a peaceful drive home had become a battlefield, one that would soon draw more combatants. As the sirens grew closer, Marcus stood ready, knowing that this was only the beginning of a war he never wanted but would not back down from. Lieutenant Briggs's cruiser screeched to a halt at the scene, its headlights cutting through the growing dusk. The car door slammed with enough force to make the younger officers flinch. Briggs emerged like a storm cloud, his face purple with rage as he surveyed his injured men scattered across the asphalt. "What in God's name happened here?" he bellowed, his voice echoing off the pine trees. His eyes locked on a Marcus, who stood perfectly still, his military bearing unchanged. Dawson pushed himself to his knees, still wheezing. "He attacked us, Lieutenant. We were conducting a routine stop, and—" "Routine?" Marcus's voice cut through the air like steel. "You dragged me from my vehicle without cause, assaulted me, and attempted to tase me." Briggs stormed toward him, his hand white-knuckled around his baton. "You shut your mouth. I've got 3 good officers down because of you." "Good officers don't assault civilians," Marcus replied evenly. The baton came whistling through the air without warning. Most people would have been caught completely off guard, but Marcus had seen the tension in his shoulder, the slight shift in his weight. He stepped inside the arc of the swing, deflecting the baton with his forearm while staying just out of reach. Briggs snarled, launching into a series of wild strikes. Each attack met empty air as Marcus moved with practiced efficiency. He didn't attack. He simply wasn't where the baton tried to be. His control was perfect, his movements precise. "Stand still," Briggs roared, his face growing redder with each failed attempt. "Like your officers made me stand still?" Marcus's voice remained calm, even as he redirected another blow. "While they kicked me, searched me, threatened me." A small crowd had gathered on the roadside. Cell phones recorded everything, their screens glowing in the deepening twilight. Briggs noticed them, and his fury doubled. "Get those phones," he ordered. "Confiscate every device. This is an active crime scene." Officers who had arrived as backup moved toward the witnesses, but their attention kept dragging back to Marcus. They'd seen what he'd done to their colleagues. None wanted to be next. Briggs launched another attack, this time aiming for his knees. Marcus caught the baton mid-swing. For a moment they stood locked together, Briggs's raw anger against Marcus's disciplined strength. Then Marcus twisted, using his momentum to send him stumbling forward. The baton clattered to the pavement. Marcus could have ended him there. One strike to the back of his head, another to his kidney. Briggs had left himself completely open. Instead, Marcus stepped back, hands raised slightly. "That's enough, Lieutenant. We both know this stop was illegal." "Illegal?" Briggs straightened up, trying to mask his heavy breathing. "The only thing illegal here is assaulting police officers. Take him down. Now." The backup officers hesitated, looking at their fallen colleagues, then at Marcus's calm stance. Fear warred with duty on their faces. "I won't resist," Marcus said clearly, keeping his hands visible. But everyone here knows what really happened. Two officers finally approached, their movements stiff with tension. They grabbed his arms roughly, but he didn't fight as they pulled them behind his back. The handcuffs clicked shut with unnecessary force. "You're under arrest for assault on law enforcement officers, resisting arrest, and attempted murder," Briggs spat, retrieving his baton. He stepped close, his voice dropping to a whisper. "You have no idea what you just started." As they led him to a patrol car, Marcus watched Briggs directing his men. "Secure the scene. I want every phone, every camera, and someone find out what happened to our dash cam footage." The drive to the county station was tense. Marcus sat silently in the back, observing everything through the cage partition. The officers up front kept glancing at him in the rearview mirror, their nervousness evident in every jerky movement. At the station, he was processed with deliberate slowness. Each step seemed designed to maximize discomfort and humiliation. Through it all, he maintained his composure, gathering intelligence. He noted which officers avoided eye contact, which ones seemed uncomfortable with the situation, and which ones followed Briggs's lead without question. From his position in booking, he could see Briggs in his office, orchestrating the cover-up. Officers cycled in and out, each leaving with specific tasks. One carried out the dashcam hard drives. Another began typing what would undoubtedly be a falsified report. "Computer systems acting up," an officer announced loudly. "Might lose some files tonight." Briggs's smile was cold. These things happen. Technology is never reliable. They placed Marcus in a holding cell away from other inmates. The concrete walls were cold, the metal bench unyielding. He sat with perfect posture, his training allowing him to find comfort in the discomfort. He'd survived worse conditions in far more hostile territories. Heavy footsteps approached. Briggs appeared at the bars, his face set in a smug expression. He'd regained his composure, apparently confident in his ability to control the narrative. "No judge in this county will believe your story," he said, tapping his baton against the bars. "It'll be your word against 3 respected officers. And now look at you, just another violent offender in a cell." The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as 2 officers led Marcus through the booking area. His muscles ached from the hard metal bench, but he kept his posture straight, his face composed. The night had been long, filled with the echoes of drunk tanks and the occasional shouts of other inmates. "Processing for release hearing," one officer announced, refusing to meet his eyes. The booking sergeant typed slowly, deliberately drawing out each click of the keyboard. Lieutenant Briggs burst through the door, a thick folder tucked under his arm. His smile was all teeth and malice. "Going nowhere just yet. Got some paperwork to file first." He slapped the folder down, spreading out multiple charge sheets. "Assault on law enforcement officers, that's 3 counts. Resisting arrest. And my personal favorite." He held up the last form with theatrical flair. "Attempted murder. That's absurd," Marcus said quietly, noting how several nearby officers shifted uncomfortably. "Is it?" Briggs's voice dripped with mock concern. "Officers Dawson and Riker tell a different story. How you exploded into violence during a routine stop. How you used military-style attacks that could have killed them. They're both in the hospital, by the way, thanks to you." "I want my phone call," Marcus said. "And I'm requesting legal counsel." "Oh, certainly. We're all about proper procedure here." Briggs's laugh was harsh, unlike some people who think they can assault officers without consequences. The phone call was brief. Within an hour, Harper Lane strode into the station, her heels clicking purposefully against the linoleum. Her sharp eyes took in everything: the officer's body language, the hastily posted duty roster changes, the way Briggs hovered near the booking desk. "I'm representing Commander Ward," Harper announced, her voice carrying. "I need to see all charging documents and incident reports immediately." Briggs tried to stare her down. "We're still processing the paperwork. These things take time." "Fascinating," Harper replied, "especially since you've already leaked details to the press. I saw the morning news segment about the dangerous veteran who attacked your officers." She turned to Marcus, speaking quietly but clearly. This county has a history of protecting abusive officers. 8 similar incidents in the past year alone, all buried. But they've never tried to frame someone with your credentials. The dash camera footage will clear this up, Marcus said. Harper's smile was grim. Let me guess. Technical difficulties? Equipment malfunction. Briggs cut in. Real shame. But we have 3 officers' sworn statements about his unprovoked attack. 3 identical statements, I'm sure, Harper replied. We'll be requesting federal oversight. The pattern of civil rights violations in this department is too clear to ignore. While Harper argued with Briggs about bail conditions, Marcus observed the station's operations. He noted which officers handled evidence, which ones managed the computers, who had access to the security footage. Every detail was valuable intelligence. Through the station's windows, he could see news vans gathering. A reporter was already doing a live stand-up, gesturing toward the building. On the break-room television, a local anchor read from a statement. Sources within the department described the suspect as mentally unstable, possibly suffering from PTSD. They're pushing hard to control the narrative, Harper muttered, returning with release papers. But they made mistakes. The timing of the report submissions, the missing footage, the escalation of charges, it all shows coordination. We can use that. The bail process took another 2 hours. Every signature was scrutinized, every form double-checked. Briggs watched it all, his presence a clear message of intimidation. Finally, Marcus stepped out into the harsh Georgia sun. News cameras swung toward him, but Harper stepped in front, blocking their shots. No comments at this time. Any questions can be directed to my office. The drive home felt surreal. Every patrol car they passed seemed to slow down, officers craning their necks to look. Harper's words rang in Marcus's mind. They'll try to isolate you, make you feel watched. Don't let them. His daughter's neighborhood was buzzing with unusual activity. Neighbors stood in clusters, conversations dying as Marcus's car passed. A news van idled at the corner, the reporter perking up at his approach. I'll have my team start building the case, Harper said as they pulled up to Marcus's house. We'll need to move fast before they destroy more evidence. Are you sure you don't want to stay somewhere else? This is my home, Marcus replied simply. I won't be driven out. Harper nodded, understanding. Call me immediately if they try anything. And Commander, be careful. Men like Briggs are most dangerous when they're scared. Marcus walked up his front path, aware of the cameras watching, the neighbors peeking through curtains. His phone buzzed continuously. News alerts, social media mentions, messages from unknown numbers. The local station's website already had a headline, Violent Veteran Attacks Officers During Traffic Stop. Inside, his house was quiet, untouched. The silence felt like a refuge after the chaos of the jail. He closed the door, shutting out the world's noise, but his phone kept vibrating. Another alert. Police union demands maximum charges in officer assault case. Marcus placed the phone face down on his counter. They wanted him to feel overwhelmed, isolated, afraid. But they didn't understand who they were dealing with. He'd faced worse odds in places where there were no rules, no cameras, no legal recourse. Here, at least there was a system, corrupt as it might be, that could be made to work. He looked at his reflection in the kitchen window, seeing the soldier he'd always been. No, he wouldn't be intimidated. Not by Briggs, not by his corrupt department, not by their media manipulation. They had started this fight thinking he was an easy target. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. The morning sky hung low and threatening as Marcus backed out of his driveway. News vans had finally cleared out, but he spotted a patrol car parked 2 blocks down, poorly hidden behind a neighbor's oak tree. They weren't even trying to be subtle anymore. His phone buzzed with a text from Harper. Meet at office ASAP. Federal contact agreed to hear us. Marcus checked his mirrors, noting another cruiser that had pulled out behind him 3 turns back. They were getting sloppy with their surveillance, which meant they were getting desperate. The parking garage near Harper's downtown office loomed ahead, its concrete levels rising like a fortress in the gray morning light. Marcus chose the 3rd level, away from the scattered cars on the lower floors. As he pulled into a space, his trained instincts registered multiple details. The echo of boots on concrete, The reflection of movement in parked car windows, the deliberate positioning of vehicles near the exit ramp. He stepped out of his car, keys in hand. "I know you're here," he called out, his voice carrying across the empty level. "Let's skip the theatrics." For deputies emerged from behind pillars and vehicles. He recognized Deputy Slate from booking, his young face tight with nervous energy. The others were older, harder looking. All carried batons, and their stance made it clear this wasn't an official visit. "Lieutenant said you might cause problems," the largest deputy growled, tapping his baton against his leg. "Said we should make sure you understand how things work around here before you meet those feds," another added, circling to his left. "Accidents happen in parking garages all the time," a third said, "especially to people who don't know when to keep quiet." Marcus remained still, analyzing distances, positions, angles. They had planned this poorly, too spread out, too focused on blocking exits rather than coordinating their attack. Amateur mistakes that would cost them. "Last chance to walk away," he offered, knowing they wouldn't take it. Slate rushed in first, eager to prove himself. His baton swing was wide, telegraphed. Marcus stepped inside his reach, redirecting his momentum into a parked sedan. The impact dented the door and left him gasping. The others attacked together, but without coordination. Marcus moved between concrete pillars, using the structure itself as both shield and weapon. A baton struck concrete where his head had been. He grabbed the weapon, twisting it in its wielder into another deputy's charge. They collided hard, cursing and stumbling. Marcus seized the moment to disable Slate, who was trying to stand. A precise strike to his knee dropped him back down, followed by a controlled chop to the nerve cluster in his shoulder. He crumpled, conscious but unable to rejoin the fight. "Federal assault now," one deputy snarled, drawing a taser. "You're just making it worse." Marcus caught his wrist as the taser sparked, directing the electrodes into his partner's chest. The man convulsed and dropped. Before the taser-wielding deputy could react, Marcus slammed his arm against a pillar, sending the weapon clattering across the concrete. The largest deputy bull-rushed him, trying to pin him against a car. Marcus used his momentum, adding to it with a hip throw that sent him skidding across the rough surface. He rolled to his feet, spitting blood, and charged again. This time Marcus met him with his fallen partner's baton, striking pressure points in rapid succession. He went down hard, clutching his paralyzed arm. The remaining deputy backed away, fumbling for his radio. Marcus closed the distance in 2 steps, trapped his hand before he could key the mic, and disarmed him with a wrist lock that left him kneeling in pain. "Stay down," he ordered, applying just enough pressure to make his point clear. "Unless you want to explain to the medics exactly how you dislocated your own shoulder." The garage echoed with groans and ragged breathing. Marcus retrieved his phone, documenting the scene methodically, the weapons they dropped, the positions of the deputies, the damage to vehicles. He sent everything to Harper with a quick text. "Attempted assault in parking garage. For deputies, need cleanup." Slate tried to speak through pain-clenched teeth. "You don't understand. He'll kill us if we don't stop you." "Then you should have thought harder about who you work for," Marcus replied, checking each deputy's condition. None had life-threatening injuries, but they wouldn't be swinging batons again anytime soon. Footsteps echoed from the lower level, civilians drawn by the noise. Someone was already on the phone with emergency services, their voice carrying. "There's fighting in the parking garage. Send police." Marcus collected the dropped weapons, arranging them clearly for photographs. More evidence of their attempted ambush. More proof of the department's desperation. The first hints of sirens wailed in the distance as he walked calmly toward the exit ramp. The deputies remained where they had fallen, perhaps finally understanding the magnitude of their mistake. Their groans and curses followed him down the concrete passages. He moved steadily, unhurried, his breathing controlled. The garage's shadows gave way to gray daylight. The sirens grew louder, approaching from multiple directions. Soon this level would be swarming with first responders and more of Briggs's corrupted force. But he had accomplished what he needed. The attack was documented. The deputies were neutralized without permanent injury. And most importantly, They had proven how far the department would go to silence him. The rising wind carried the sound of more sirens as Marcus emerged onto the street. Red and blue lights reflected off nearby buildings. He took out his phone to update Harper on his delayed arrival, his fingers steady as he typed. The afternoon sun cast long shadows through Harper's office windows as Marcus sat across from her desk. Files and photographs from the parking garage incident were spread between them, each image a testament to the morning's violence. "They're spinning this faster than I expected," Harper said, tapping a freshly printed news article. "Look at this headline. Unstable veteran attacks officers in parking structure. They're painting you as someone who seeks out confrontation." Marcus leaned forward, scanning the article. His jaw tightened at the quotes from anonymous department sources describing him as a threat to public safety. "They move quickly," he observed. "Briggs is smarter than he looks," Harper admitted, shuffling through more papers. "He's already been to the DA's office. My contact there says he spent 2 hours with Marston this morning, right after the garage incident. Let me guess, they're expediting the charges." Harper nodded grimly. "Marston's calling it a matter of public safety. They're trying to fast-track your prosecution before we can gather more evidence of their corruption." Marcus stood, pacing the length of Harper's office. The carpet muffled his steps as he moved past the law degrees and civic awards adorning the walls. "They're desperate," he said. "Those deputies this morning, they were scared, not just of me, but of Briggs. One of them said Briggs would kill them if they failed. That tracks with what I've been hearing." Harper pulled out another file. 3 complaints in the last year about officers claiming they were forced to falsify reports. All dismissed, of course, but there's a pattern of intimidation within the department. "We need to go higher," Marcus said, stopping at the window. Below, pedestrians moved along the sidewalk, unaware of the corruption festering in their community. "Federal oversight. I have a contact at the Justice Department," Harper said. "Daniel Cross. He specializes in department-wide corruption cases." Marcus nodded. "Make the call. But Briggs will retaliate as soon as he knows we're reaching out to the feds." "He's already retaliating." Harper pulled up an email on her computer. "Just got this from a courthouse clerk. Briggs called an emergency meeting with his senior deputies an hour ago. Closed door, no records. My source says he was livid about the parking garage. Kept talking about containing you before you could do more damage. What else?" One deputy suggested backing off, letting things cool down. Harper's expression darkened. Briggs threatened his family. Marcus absorbed this, his military training helping him process the escalating threat. He's showing weakness. Strong leaders don't need to threaten their own people. But wounded animals are the most dangerous, Harper warned. And Briggs has the whole department acting like his personal attack dogs. A knock at the door interrupted them. Harper's assistant entered with more files. "These just came from traffic court. They're issuing citations against Mr. Ward's vehicle. Expired registration, improper equipment, missing plates, all fabricated. They're trying to build a paper trail," Harper said, scanning the documents. "Make you look like a chronic offender." "Small-time intimidation," Marcus observed. "They're throwing everything they can think of, hoping something sticks. It's more than that." Harper spread out the citations. "They're establishing a pattern. Each citation gives them an excuse to pull you over. They're setting up future confrontations." Marcus studied the papers, noting how each violation had been carefully crafted to appear legitimate. "They're learning. This morning they tried brute force. Now they're using bureaucracy as a weapon, which is why we need federal involvement immediately," Harper said, reaching for her phone again. "Cross can freeze these citations, prevent them from filing more. But we have to move fast. How long until he can get here? If I reach him today, maybe 48 hours. But that's 2 days Briggs can use to escalate things further." Marcus nodded, already formulating contingency plans. "I'll be ready. They won't catch me off guard again. There's something else." Harper hesitated, then pulled out one final document. "Briggs filed a motion to revoke your bail, claiming you're a danger to his officers. Judge Whitman is reviewing it now." "Whitman? Isn't he the one who golfs with Marston every Sunday?" Harper's expression was grim. "The system here is a closed loop. Marcus, they protect each other, cover for each other. Breaking that loop won't be easy. It never is, Marcus said, gathering his things. But systems like this have weak points. We just have to find them. The drive home was tense, Marcus constantly checking his mirrors for patrol cars. But the department seemed to be keeping their distance for now. As he pulled into his driveway, the setting sun painted his house in deep orange and shadow. Citations were taped to his front door, multiple sheets fluttering in the evening breeze, a pointed reminder that they could reach him anywhere, even here. Marcus removed them one by one, noting how official they looked, how carefully they'd been crafted to appear legitimate. Standing in his doorway, he studied his quiet street. Somewhere out there, Briggs was planning his next move. More deputies were being pressured into corruption. More innocent people were at risk of becoming targets. What had started as a simple traffic stop had evolved into something much larger. This wasn't just about defending himself anymore. It was about exposing a system that had rotted from within, about protecting a community that didn't even realize how deeply the corruption ran. The evening air grew cooler as darkness crept in. Marcus stood motionless, citations in hand, feeling the weight of the fight ahead. Dismantling an entire corrupt system wouldn't be quick or easy. But he had faced worse odds before. The neon beer signs cast a sickly glow across the parking lot of Ali's bar as Marcus pulled in. The sun was setting behind the building, painting the sky in deep purples and oranges. He'd chosen this time carefully. Shift change meant maximum off-duty officers would be present. Ali's had been a cop bar for decades. The wooden sign above the door was weathered, barely legible in the growing darkness. Marcus took a deep breath, centered himself, and pushed through the heavy door. The effect was immediate. Conversations died mid-sentence. Heads turned, eyes narrowed. The place reeked of stale beer and hostility. At least 15 off-duty officers occupied various tables and bar stools, all now laser-focused on his presence. Marcus moved with deliberate calm to the bar, feeling the weight of their stares. The bartender, a heavy-set man with graying temples, approached with visible reluctance. "Water," Marcus said simply. The bartender placed a glass in front of him without comment, then retreated to the far end of the bar where a cluster of officers huddled, speaking in low voices. Marcus didn't turn around. He didn't need to. The mirror behind the bar gave him a perfect view of the room. Deputy Riker sat at a corner table with 4 other officers, his face flushed from alcohol. His voice carried clearly across the now-quiet space. Told Briggs not to worry about it. Judge Whitman's got his back. Been that way since they were rookies together. One of his companions glanced nervously in Marcus's direction. Riker laughed louder now, clearly wanting him to hear. What's he going to do? That dash cam footage is gone. Briggs made sure of it himself. Stayed late to wipe everything clean. No evidence means his word against ours, another officer added. And we all know how that plays out in Whitman's court. Marcus took a slow sip of water, memorizing details. The mirror showed 3 officers by the pool table beginning to move, positioning themselves between him and the exit. Their movements were clumsy. They'd been drinking heavily. He stood, turning to face Riker's table. The bar grew even quieter, tension crackling in the air. Each step toward the table echoed against the wooden floor. That footage showed everything, didn't it? Marcus asked calmly. That's why Briggs was so eager to destroy it. Riker's face twisted with anger. You got some nerve coming in here. Just confirming facts, Marcus said. Like how Judge Whitman takes bribes to dismiss cases against corrupt officers. One of the drunk officers from the pool table grabbed his shoulder. Time for you to leave. Marcus didn't move. Take your hand off me. Or what? A second officer moved in, breath heavy with whiskey. You're outnumbered here. Last warning, Marcus said quietly. The third officer lunged, trying to grab his arm. Marcus shifted, redirecting his momentum. He crashed into a table, sending glasses shattering across the floor. The first officer swung a wild punch. Marcus blocked it easily, using his own force to spin him into the second attacker. They stumbled, cursing. One grabbed a chair, swinging it like a club. Marcus stepped inside his reach. The chair splintered against the bar as he took the man down with a precise strike to the solar plexus. He crumpled, gasping. The remaining officers attacked together, coordinating despite their drunkenness. Marcus moved with fluid efficiency, never wasting motion. One swing left a dent in the wall where his head had been a moment before. He countered with an elbow strike that dropped the attacker to his knees. The last officer backed away, eyes wide with fear. Behind him, Marcus heard chairs scraping as other cops stood, but no one moved to help. They'd seen what happened to the first three. The footage, Marcus said, turning back to Riker. Briggs deleted it personally. Riker's face was pale now, the alcohol bravado gone. You're crazy coming here like this. Answer the question. Yeah, he spat. He wiped everything. Security footage too. Spent 2 hours making sure nothing survived. Happy now? Extremely. Marcus surveyed the room. Several officers had phones out recording. Perfect. More evidence for Harper. Anyone else want to add anything about Judge Whitman's special relationship with the department? Silence answered him. The 3 officers he disabled were still on the floor, moaning softly. Behind the bar, the bartender had disappeared, probably calling for backup. Then we're done here. Marcus moved toward the exit, maintaining awareness of every person in the room. No one tried to stop him. They watched with a mixture of fear and fury as he reached the door. The night air felt cool against his skin as he stepped outside. Stars were beginning to appear in the darkening sky. He could hear sirens in the distance, the cavalry finally responding to the bartender's call. But they were too late. He had what he needed. Marcus pulled out his phone, already composing a message to Harper about Briggs personally destroying evidence and Judge Whitman's corruption. The pieces were falling into place. Each confrontation revealed more of their network, more proof of how deep the rot went. The bar door opened behind him. A voice called out, thick with pain and rage, "This isn't over." He didn't bother turning around. Their threats were empty now, born of desperation and wounded pride. The real fight wasn't with drunk officers in a bar. It was with the system that protected them, the corrupt officials who enabled their behavior. Marcus got in his car, watching in the rearview mirror as more officers stumbled out of Ali's. They looked lost, their illusion of untouchable power shattered along with that chair. He started the engine, already focusing on the next step. The evidence was destroyed, but now he had witnesses who'd admitted to its destruction. It wasn't ideal, but Harper would know how to use it. The sirens grew louder as he pulled away from the bar, leaving behind a scene of broken furniture, bruised egos, and the first real cracks in the department's wall of silence. The morning sun cast long shadows across the empty road as Marcus headed toward Harper's office. His phone, propped on the dashboard, displayed a carefully organized summary of last night's revelations at Ali's. The recorded confessions about Briggs and Judge Whitman would blow this case wide open. A flash of white and blue in his rearview mirror caught his attention. A patrol SUV had appeared behind him, following uncomfortably close. Marcus checked his speed, exactly at the limit. The SUV's grille filled his mirror, close enough that he could make out the driver's face. Officer Matthews, one of Briggs's most loyal attack dogs. "Here we go," he muttered, gripping the wheel tighter. The patrol vehicle swerved into the oncoming lane, engine roaring as it pulled alongside him. Matthews's partner, Reynolds, sat in the passenger's seat, both men wearing expressions of pure hatred. Marcus maintained his speed, watching as Matthews jerked his wheel toward him. The first impact was tentative, a warning bump that made his tires squeal. He countered with a defensive driving technique, maintaining control while appearing to struggle. "Come on," he said quietly. "Show me what you're really here for." As if hearing his challenge, Matthews slammed his SUV into Marcus's car with full force. The impact sent shudders through his vehicle, but Marcus was ready. He'd already activated his phone's camera, mounted to capture everything. The road ahead curved sharply to the right, bordered by a steep ditch. Matthews accelerated, trying to pin him against the guardrail. Instead of fighting it, Marcus tapped his brakes. The patrol SUV shot forward, overshooting its mark. "Amateur hour," he said, watching Matthews struggle with his steering. The vehicle fishtailed, tires leaving black streaks on the asphalt. Reynolds grabbed the dashboard, panic clear on his face. Marcus executed a perfect pursuit intervention technique, a precision tap to the patrol SUV's rear quarter panel. The effect was devastating. Matthews overcompensated, sending the vehicle into an uncontrollable spin. The patrol SUV careened across both lanes, hit the shoulder, and rolled once before settling in the ditch. Steam hissed from the crumpled hood. Marcus pulled over, positioning his car to block any escape routes. Matthews kicked his door open, stumbling out with his hand on his holster. "You're dead," he screamed, but his voice shook. Blood trickled from a cut on his forehead. "Stay where you are," Marcus called out, phone recording everything. "Keep your hands visible." Reynolds emerged from the passenger's side, already reaching for his radio. "Unit 47, officer down." Marcus moved with practiced efficiency. 2 quick strikes dropped Matthews before he could draw his weapon. Reynolds backed away, fumbling with his radio. "Shots fired." "Shots." Marcus closed the distance in 3 steps, sweeping his legs and pinning him face down. "No shots fired," he said calmly, securing his arms. "Just like there was no reason for you to try running me off the road. Briggs will kill you for this." Matthews groaned from where he lay. "Add that threat to the recording," Marcus replied, checking both officers for serious injuries. Finding none, he used their own handcuffs to secure them to their vehicle's push bar. The whole encounter had lasted less than 2 minutes. Marcus returned to his car, reviewing the footage. Every second was clear. The unprovoked attack, their attempts to cause a fatal crash, Matthews' final threat. He created multiple backups, sending copies to Harper and the federal tip line he'd been given. Steam continued rising from the patrol SUV's mangled hood. The front axle was clearly broken, and fluid leaked steadily into the dirt. Both officers stared at him with a mixture of hatred and fear as he prepared to leave. "You know what the difference is between us?" Marcus asked them. "I could have killed you both easily. Instead, you'll live to face consequences." He nodded toward his phone. "Everything's recorded. Your careers are over." "Briggs owns this county," Reynolds spat. "You got nothing." "Look around," Marcus said. "Your vehicle's destroyed. You're handcuffed to your own bumper. Your attack failed completely. Still think Briggs is winning." Neither officer responded. In the distance, sirens began to wail, likely their backup, finally responding to the aborted radio call. Marcus got into his car, checking the time. He'd still make his meeting with Harper, now with even more evidence of the department's desperation. "Backup's coming," Matthews called out weakly. "You won't get far." "I'm not running," Marcus said. "I'll be at my lawyer's office filing assault charges against both of you. Feel free to send more officers. We'll add witness intimidation to the list." He pulled away smoothly, watching in his mirror as the patrol SUV's hood released another cloud of steam. The morning sun caught the smoke, making it glow like a signal fire. Let them come, he thought. Each attack only proved how corrupt they were, how far they'd go to protect their power. The sirens grew louder behind him, but Marcus maintained exactly the speed limit. His phone buzzed. Harper had received the footage and was already preparing motions. The federal tip line had also responded, requesting an immediate interview. The road stretched ahead, empty now except for the approaching police cars in his mirror. Their desperate attack had failed, just like every other attempt to silence him. More importantly, they'd proven exactly what he'd been saying. This wasn't about one traffic stop or a few bad officers. This was about a system so corrupt that its members would attempt murder in broad daylight, confident they'd face no consequences. Marcus checked his mirror one last time. The smoking patrol SUV was barely visible now, but he could imagine Matthews and Reynolds trying to explain this disaster to their arriving colleagues. Their story wouldn't match the video evidence. Their careers, built on bullying and corruption, were finally crumbling. He turned onto the highway leading to Harper's office, ready to add this latest attack to their growing mountain of evidence. Behind him, more sirens joined the chorus, the sound of a corrupt system in its death throes, lashing out with increasing desperation. Sunlight streamed through the windows of Harper's downtown office as Marcus spread printouts, photos, and video files across the conference table. His morning confrontation with Matthews and Reynolds had left his jacket dusty, but he hadn't taken time to change. This evidence needed to be organized immediately. "They're getting bolder," Harper said, examining stills from the patrol SUV attack. "Attempting murder in broad daylight. Briggs must be desperate." Marcus nodded, pulling up the bar footage on his laptop. "Listen to this part again." He played a clip of Riker's drunken boasting about Judge Whitman's connection to Briggs. The audio was clear despite the background noise. "That's the missing link we needed," Harper said, making notes. "Proves the corruption goes beyond the department." She paused as someone knocked on the office door. "That should be our federal contact." Investigator Daniel Cross entered, his suit crisp despite the Georgia heat. He carried a thick folder and wore an expression of controlled anger. "Commander Ward," he said, extending his hand, "I've spent the morning reviewing your evidence. I apologize it took a murder attempt to get our attention." "Just call me Marcus," he replied, studying Cross's face for any sign of departmental loyalty. He found none, just professional determination. "I've opened an official inquiry," Cross said, laying out his own files. "Your documentation is exceptional. Military precision in the notes, multiple camera angles, clear chain of evidence." He tapped the photos of Marcus's original traffic stop injuries. "But it's the pattern that concerns me most. This isn't random brutality. It's systematic." Harper pulled up more files on her computer. "We've identified similar cases going back 5 years, all involving Lieutenant Briggs or officers under his command, all targeting black drivers, all with mysteriously missing evidence. Except this time," Marcus added, "they picked someone who could fight back and knew how to document everything." Cross nodded grimly. "My team visited the station this morning. The panic was immediate. Several officers suddenly requested vacation time. Others started shredding files until we stopped them." "Briggs was there?" Harper asked. "Left as soon as he saw our badges, but not before we secured the computer systems." Cross opened his folder, revealing screenshots of internal emails. "Your traffic stop wasn't spontaneous, Commander. They tracked your vehicle for days, planning the confrontation. Briggs personally selected the officers involved." Marcus felt his jaw tighten. "Why? Because you're black and drive a nice car?" "Partially, but also because they'd observed you visiting your daughter. They assumed having family in their jurisdiction would make you vulnerable to pressure." Cross's expression hardened. "They've used similar tactics before, threatening relatives to force victims into silence." "Not this time," Marcus said quietly, his voice carrying absolute certainty. Harper's phone buzzed. She checked it and frowned. "Briggs is already responding to the federal presence. He's called an emergency press conference for this afternoon." "Let me guess," Marcus said. "More claims about my military aggression issues?" "Worse," Harper replied. "He's trying to paint you as a domestic terrorist. Says your combat training makes you a threat to public safety." She showed them the press release. "He's demanding federal authorities arrest you, not investigate him." Cross shook his head. "Classic deflection, but it won't work. We have his departmental emails discussing how to provoke you into a reaction. He wanted violence. He just didn't expect you'd survive it and document everything." They spent the next hour reviewing evidence for the preliminary hearing. Cross confirmed the federal investigation would take precedence over local charges, effectively neutralizing Judge Whitman's influence. Every new piece of evidence revealed deeper corruption, falsified reports, missing dash cam footage, coordinated harassment campaigns against other victims. "The roadside attack this morning was sloppy," Cross noted, watching the video again. "They're unraveling, making mistakes, which makes them more dangerous," Marcus said. "Men like Briggs would rather destroy everything than lose control." Harper's assistant interrupted with more news. Multiple deputies had walked off the job, refusing to follow Briggs's increasingly erratic orders. Others were calling the federal tip line, offering to testify about years of misconduct. "The thin blue line is cracking," Cross said. "Once officers realize federal charges are possible, loyalty to Briggs becomes a liability." "He won't accept that," Harper warned. "His whole identity is built on power, on being untouchable." "Then we make sure every attack backfires," Marcus said firmly. "Every threat becomes evidence." Every attempt to silence us proves our case. They prepared for the preliminary hearing scheduled for the following week. Harper organized witness statements from other victims. Cross added federal charges to the growing list of violations. Marcus provided tactical analysis of each confrontation, proving the escalating pattern of violence. One concern, Cross said as they finished. Briggs still has supporters in the department. They're watching your movements, logging your contacts. Standard intimidation tactics. Let them watch, Marcus replied. Every surveillance attempt is another civil rights violation to document. The meeting concluded with a clear strategy. Harper would handle legal proceedings while Cross expanded the federal investigation. Marcus would continue gathering evidence while maintaining his defensive posture against further attacks. Stay alert, Cross advised as they prepared to leave. Briggs is the type to take this personally. His power structure is crumbling, and he knows it. Marcus gathered his files, noting how the evidence now filled multiple boxes. Each attempt to silence him had only made their case stronger. The very tactics meant to protect their corruption were exposing it instead. Harper walked him to the elevator. We'll need you back tomorrow to prepare for depositions. My security team can escort you. I'll be fine, Marcus assured her. They've learned direct confrontation doesn't work. The elevator opened to the lobby, its mirrored walls reflecting his determined expression. Through the glass doors, he could see the street clearly. An unmarked Crown Victoria sat across the intersection, its occupants poorly concealing their surveillance. Marcus straightened his jacket, checking that his phone was still recording. Let them watch, he thought. Let them see what real strength looks like. Every moment they spent monitoring him was another moment their corrupt system weakened. The department's desperation was becoming more obvious with each passing hour. Their power, built on decades of unchecked authority, was finally facing real consequences. And Marcus intended to see those consequences through to the end. The wooden benches creaked under the weight of spectators as Marcus entered the crowded courtroom. Every seat was filled with people standing against the back wall. News of federal involvement had drawn reporters, civil rights activists, and countless citizens who'd experienced similar abuse. Harper walked beside him, briefcase filled with evidence. Investigator Cross sat at a separate table, his presence adding federal weight to the proceedings. Across the aisle, Lieutenant Briggs and his department lawyer projected false confidence. Judge Marshall entered, and the room stood. Unlike Judge Whitman, who'd recused himself after his connections to Briggs emerged, Marshall had a reputation for independence. Her expression revealed nothing as she reviewed the morning's motions. We'll begin with the federal evidence, Marshall announced, nodding to Investigator Cross. Cross approached the bench with a digital recorder and transcripts. Your Honor, during our investigation of missing dashcam footage, we recovered backup audio from officer body microphones. Department policy requires these recordings be preserved for 90 days. They were deliberately hidden in a miscategorized archive. Briggs shifted in his chair as Cross connected the audio system. His lawyer whispered urgently in his ear. The first recording is from Deputy Dawson's microphone, time-stamped to the initial traffic stop, Cross explained. The courtroom fell silent as Dawson's voice filled the space. Look at this one. Old man driving a car like that. Probably stole it from some rich white family. Riker's voice followed. Time to teach some respect. Been too long since we had a good one. The racial slurs that followed made several spectators gasp. The recording captured their approaching footsteps, the aggressive commands, and most crucially, their discussion of using force before any interaction occurred. Dawson, watch this. Going to make him squirm real good. Just don't leave marks where cameras can see. You know the drill. Harper stood. Your Honor, this proves premeditation. The officers planned to use excessive force before any contact with my client. The department lawyer objected, claiming the recordings could have been altered. Judge Marshall overruled immediately. The Federal Forensics Lab has authenticated these recordings, Cross stated. We have continuous audio from multiple officers' devices. He played another clip, the moment they dragged Marcus from his vehicle. The sounds of impact were clear, along with their taunting comments about putting him in his place. The recording captured Marcus's calm warnings, followed by the distinct buzz of Dawson's taser. Several jurors visibly recoiled at the officer's language and threats. Even Judge Marshall's neutral expression cracked slightly. The prosecution has charged Commander Ward with assaulting officers and resisting arrest, Harper addressed the court. These recordings prove he acted in self-defense against an orchestrated attack motivated by racial bias. Briggs's face had turned deep red. His hands gripped the table edge until his knuckles went white. Cross presented more evidence. Internal emails showing the department's pattern of targeting black drivers. Testimony from officers who'd quit rather than participate in Briggs's schemes. Data proving systematic evidence destruction. Your Honor, the department lawyer attempted. These recordings were obtained without proper. They were obtained through standard federal investigation protocols. Judge Marshall cut him off. And they revealed deeply disturbing conduct by law enforcement officers. Marcus watched Briggs carefully. His composure was crumbling. The carefully constructed image of authority he'd maintained for decades was dissolving in real time. Judge Marshall reviewed the transcripts again. Based on this evidence, I'm dismissing the charges of assaulting an officer and resisting arrest. Commander Ward's actions clearly constitute self-defense against excessive force and civil rights violations. A wave of whispers swept through the courtroom. Briggs shot to his feet. "This is nonsense," he shouted. "He attacked my officers. We can't let these people." "Lieutenant Briggs." Judge Marshall's voice cracked like a whip. "Control yourself or be held in contempt. Your choice of words is telling." Harper stood. "Your Honor, given the clear evidence of civil rights violations, we move to dismiss all remaining charges against my client." "So ordered," Marshall replied without hesitation. "Furthermore, I'm referring this matter to the Justice Department's Civil Rights Division for additional investigation." The gallery erupted in murmurs. Years of unchecked abuse were finally facing consequences. Marcus remained composed, but inside he felt the first real relief since that night on the highway. Briggs stormed out, shouldering past reporters. His lawyer trailed behind, already distancing himself from the collapse. "Commander," Judge Marshall addressed him directly, "I apologize for the ordeal you've endured. This court failed in its duty to protect citizens from abuse of power." Marcus nodded respectfully. "Thank you, Your Honor." After the judge departed, well-wishers surrounded Marcus and Harper. Cross joined them. His usually stern expression softened slightly. "This is just the beginning," he said quietly. "The federal investigation will continue. More victims are coming forward." "Good," Marcus replied. "The whole system needs exposure." They made their way through the courthouse halls, past cameras and microphones. Harper handled the press questions, while Marcus moved steadily toward the exit. The noon sun felt warm and cleansing as he stepped outside. For the first time since the traffic stop, he felt the weight lifting. Not gone entirely. There would be more battles ahead, but the momentum had shifted. Truth was finally breaking through decades of silence and intimidation. Standing on the courthouse steps, Marcus watched citizens gathering, sharing stories of their own encounters with departmental abuse. Each person who spoke up added another crack to the wall of impunity Briggs had built. Harper joined him outside. The judge's ruling opens the door for civil suits. Other victims can now come forward with solid legal precedent. Marcus nodded, feeling the warm breeze and watching more community members arrive to show support. The system's power had always depended on isolation, making each victim feel alone and helpless. That isolation was breaking down, replaced by unity and determination. The sunset painted long shadows across Marcus's driveway as he pulled in, his shoulders finally relaxing after weeks of tension. The courthouse victory felt substantial, like the first real crack in Briggs's armor. He collected his jacket and briefcase, allowing himself a small smile. Inside, he kicked off his shoes and poured a glass of water, replaying Judge Marshall's words. The validation felt good, but more importantly, it opened doors for others to come forward. Maybe the system could change, even if slowly. His phone buzzed, his daughter's number lighting up the screen. But it wasn't her voice that came through. It was her neighbor, Mrs. Chun, speaking in panicked tones. "Marcus, they're here. For patrol cars. They're going into your daughter's house right now." The glass slipped from Marcus's hand, shattering on the kitchen tile. "What? Who's there?" "The sheriff's department. They're saying something about obstruction charges, evidence tampering. Your daughter was just sitting on her porch. They're being so rough with her." Marcus was already moving, grabbing his keys. "Call Harper's office. Tell them exactly what's happening. I'm on my way." He hadn't made it to his car when his phone exploded with notifications. News alerts, text messages, social media tags, all carrying variations of the same headline. Delta Force Commander's violent past exposed. Questions about mental stability. His hands went cold as he opened the first link. There was a service photo alongside carefully selected mission details that had been twisted to paint him as unstable and dangerous. Classified information about his counterterrorism work had been leaked and deliberately misrepresented. The article quoted anonymous department sources describing him as trained in lethal tactics and potentially unstable from combat stress. They'd even dug up the names of teammates he'd lost, using their deaths to suggest he harbored deep-seated rage issues. His phone rang again. Harper this time. "They're crucifying you on every channel," Harper said without preamble. "Briggs must have connections in military intelligence. This leak came from somewhere high up. They have my daughter." Marcus's voice was tight. "4 patrol cars at her house. I know. I've got people heading there now. But Marcus, this is coordinated. They're trying to destroy your credibility before." A loud knocking interrupted them. Through his window, Marcus saw camera crews assembling on his lawn. News vans were double parking along his quiet street. "They're here too," he told Harper. "Don't engage. Don't answer anything. They're trying to provoke a reaction they can use against you." The knocking became pounding. Camera flashes strobed through his windows as reporters pressed against the glass, shouting questions. "Commander Ward, is it true you were discharged for excessive force? Did your combat experience make you attack those officers? Are you currently under psychiatric care?" Marcus moved away from the windows, his tactical training kicking in as he assessed sight lines and vulnerabilities. The house felt suddenly exposed, like a target under a spotlight. His phone lit up with another call. "Mrs. Chun again. They put her in handcuffs, Marcus. Your daughter's crying, but they won't let me near her. They're saying she destroyed evidence, but she ain't done nothing." Marcus's hands clenched. "Is she hurt?" They grabbed her arms so rough. She kept asking for her anxiety medication, but they wouldn't let her get it. "Stay with her if you can. I'm sending my lawyer." More pounding at his door. More shouted questions. His phone buzzed constantly with news alerts, each headline worse than the last. "Decorated commander" or "dangerous vigilante." "Violence follows Ward." "Pattern of aggressive incidents." Sources: Ward's unit suffered heavy losses under his command. He moved through his darkening house, switching off lights to make it harder for cameras to see inside. The reporter's questions became more pointed, more provocative. "Did losing your team make you snap? Were the officers right to fear for their safety? Should someone with your training be allowed to live freely?" Marcus's phone buzzed with a text from Harper. "Your daughter's being processed at county jail." Briggs himself signed the warrant. "Working on bail now." Another text followed. "Warning, they're painting you as unstable. Want you to react badly. Don't give them anything." Marcus sank onto his couch in the darkness, feeling the walls closing in. Everything he'd built, every sacrifice he'd made, Briggs was twisting it all into ammunition. His service, his losses, his dedication to protecting others. He'd turned them into weapons against him. The reporters outside kept shouting their questions, designed to wound. "Did you enjoy hurting those officers like you hurt enemy combatants? How many people died under your command? Are you a danger to the public?" He thought of his daughter, terrified and alone in a jail cell, denied her medication. Thought of his teammates, their memories being twisted into tabloid fodder. Thought of every person Briggs had ever abused, knowing the lieutenant believed himself untouchable. The darkness felt heavy as Marcus sat motionless, letting the truth settle in his chest. The system wouldn't stop. It would keep coming, keep hurting people he loved, keep twisting reality until he was destroyed. Unless he destroyed it first. The camera flashes continued outside, lighting up his living room in harsh bursts. But Marcus barely noticed them now. His mind was already shifting, analyzing patterns and weaknesses, identifying pressure points in Briggs's network of corruption. He tried playing defense, tried working within the system. That approach had just put his daughter in jail and turned his service into a scandal. The darkness wrapped around him like a tactical cloak as he sat absolutely still, letting the rage focus his thoughts into cold precision. He'd fought against systemic evil before. He knew how to dismantle hostile networks, and he'd never lost when the mission truly mattered. Morning sunlight sliced through Marcus's bedroom blinds, casting tiger-striped shadows across his bare walls. He hadn't slept, hadn't even tried. The night had been spent processing intel, mapping connections, identifying weak points in Briggs's network. His daughter was still in custody, denied bail on obviously trumped-up charges. The media circus continued outside, though the crowd had thinned to just 2 persistent news vans. Their presence didn't matter anymore. He was done playing defense. Marcus moved through his morning routine with mechanical precision. Cold shower, protein bar, black coffee. His tactical mindset had fully engaged, treating this like any other hostile network that needed dismantling. He packed his evidence files into a secured briefcase. Recordings, timestamps, witness statements, financial records he'd gathered through back channels. The reporters perked up as he emerged from his house, but he ignored their shouted questions. Their cameras followed him to his SUV, desperate for any reaction they could twist into controversy. He gave them nothing. 20 minutes later, he walked into Harper's office. The attorney was already there with Investigator Cross, both looking grave as they watched a morning news segment about Marcus's troubled military past. "They're really pushing the unstable veteran angle," Harper said, muting the TV. "Your daughter's still being held without." "I know where this goes next," Marcus interrupted, setting his briefcase on the desk. "Briggs will keep escalating until someone dies. So in it first." He pulled out his files, spreading them across Harper's desk in precise rows. Private prison corporations showing massive profit spikes every time Briggs's department conducts special enforcement periods. Traffic stop quotas targeting specific neighborhoods. Kickback patterns disguised as consulting fees. Cross picked up one of the documents, eyebrows rising. "How did you get these financial records?" "I have contacts who owed me favors. Everything's authenticated." Marcus tapped another folder. 3 years of dash cam footage Briggs claimed was accidentally deleted. Backed up on private servers. Shows a clear pattern of targeted harassment and excessive force. Harper leaned forward. "This is exactly what we need. But it's also incredibly dangerous. These corporations have serious political influence. They also have a serious paper trail," Marcus said. "Names, dates, dollar amounts. Enough to trigger multiple federal investigations." He turned to Cross. "That's where you come in." The investigator nodded slowly, still scanning the documents. This level of coordination between law enforcement and private prisons, it's systemic corruption. "But Marcus, if we move on this," Harper said, "they won't just try to discredit you. They'll try to eliminate you. They already are." Marcus's voice was steel. "But now we have proof of why. Show them how much money they're making off false arrests. Show them the kickback patterns. Show them everything." Harper spread out more files, her legal mind already building cases. "We'll need protection for witnesses. Several of these officers might flip if offered immunity." "Already handled," Cross said. "I've got a task force on standby. But timing is crucial. If Briggs realizes we have all this, he'll burn everything and run. That's why we trigger him first," Marcus finished. "Make him react without thinking." He pulled out a final file, surveillance photos showing Briggs meeting with prison executives in private locations. He's already paranoid. When these hit the media, he'll assume someone in his inner circle betrayed him. He'll make mistakes. Harper looked concerned. He'll also become more dangerous. You're literally threatening his entire power structure. Good. Marcus's voice was cold. Let him feel threatened. Let him gather his most loyal thugs. Let him think he can still solve this with force. You check his watch. In fact, he's probably already planning something. Cross straightened. You think he'll make a direct move against you? I'm counting on it. But this time, we control where and when. Marcus pointed to a map showing an abandoned impound lot on the edge of town. It's isolated, no civilians, limited escape routes. And our surveillance shows his deputies using it for unauthorized meetings. Perfect place for an ambush, Cross said grimly. Exactly. So we leak my location through his informants. Let him think he has one last chance to silence me before these files go public. Marcus's eyes were focused and lethal. He'll bring everyone who's compromised, everyone who can't afford an investigation. Harper shook her head. It's incredibly risky, even with your training. It's necessary, Marcus cut in. We need them all in one place, making one last criminal act we can document. Clear evidence of conspiracy. Cross studied him for a long moment. You're talking about using yourself as bait. I'm talking about ending this completely. Marcus met his gaze. Your task force can't move until we have absolute proof of criminal intent. I'll get you that proof. They spent the next hours refining the plan. Harper coordinated with trusted reporters to prepare the financial exposure. Cross-position surveillance teams. Marcus walked them through tactical scenarios, entry points, likely reactions. The sun tracked across the sky as they worked. Marcus kept one eye on his phone, watching for news about his daughter. The jail was still denying visits, claiming security concerns. By late afternoon, their sources confirmed movement in Briggs's camp. Deputies were being quietly contacted. Vehicles were being moved to the impound lot. The trap was being set exactly as Marcus had predicted. Darkness fell as he parked a block from the lot. Through his windshield, he could see multiple vehicles already gathered inside the fence. More headlights approached from side streets. Briggs was assembling his force. Marcus checked his phone one last time. A text from Cross, surveillance in position. Still time to wait for backup. He didn't respond. Instead, he stepped out into the cool night air, his boots silent on the cracked pavement. The lot's chain-link fence rattled softly in the breeze. Beyond it, shadowy figures moved between parked cars and storage containers. He could hear their muttered voices, the metallic sounds of weapons being checked. Briggs was gathering everyone who was compromised, everyone who had participated in his corruption, just as Marcus had planned. Inside the dimly lit impound lot, Marcus walked steadily through pools of shadow cast by security lights. Briggs stood in the center of a loose circle, nearly a dozen deputies spread out around him. The air was thick with tension and the metallic smell of old cars. You just couldn't let it go, Briggs called out, his voice echoing off container walls. Had to keep pushing until you forced our hand. Marcus scanned his surroundings with practiced efficiency. Stacked shipping containers creating urban canyons, rusted vehicles sitting like silent witnesses, tools and chains scattered across oil-stained concrete. Every piece of terrain was a potential weapon or shield. Nobody leaves here until he's dealt with, Briggs announced to his men. Permanently. The deputies shifted nervously, checking weapons. Some held batons or lengths of pipe. Others gripped heavy chains. A few had hands hovering near holstered firearms, their breath fogged in the cold night air. Last chance to walk away, Marcus said calmly. Anyone who leaves now stays off the indictment list. A young deputy, barely more than a rookie, took an uncertain step backward. Briggs whirled on him. You move, your career is over, he snarled. Everyone here is committed. No backing out. The deputy froze, fear visible even in the dim light. Marcus logged his position. He'd hesitate in the fight, creating a gap in their circle. Take him, Briggs ordered. The first deputy charged forward, swinging a heavy chain. Marcus stepped inside his arc with fluid grace, caught his wrist, and twisted. The chain clattered to the ground as the deputy dropped, crying out in pain. Marcus kicked it away into the darkness. That broke the tension. Deputies rushed him from multiple angles, weapons raised. Marcus moved like water, each motion flowing into the next. A baton strike whistled past his head as he ducked. He caught the attacker's arm, using his momentum to throw him into two others. Metal rang against metal as a pipe hit the container behind him. Marcus spun, drove his elbow into the deputy's solar plexus, then pushed off him to avoid a chain swinging for his legs. The fight expanded, deputies spreading out to surround him. Marcus backed toward a storage container, analyzing angles and distances. 3 deputies approached from the front, tried to pin him. Instead of retreating, he planted one foot on the container side, pushed up, and grabbed the edge. In one smooth motion, he pulled himself onto the top, gaining the high ground. "Don't let him stay up there," Briggs shouted. "Get him down." 2 deputies scrambled up opposite sides of the container. Marcus waited until they were committed to their climb, then stomped hard on one's fingers. He fell back with a yell. The other managed to get one hand on top. Marcus grabbed his wrist and yanked him forward, sending him tumbling across the container surface. Below, deputies circled like wolves, looking for angles to attack. Some tried throwing tools and debris. Marcus dodged a wrench, letting it clang behind him. The elevation gave him precious seconds to study their positioning. Briggs had moved back, coordinating the assault. 4 deputies guarded the container's corners. 3 more spread out with chains and pipes, ready to strike if he descended. The rookie hung back, clearly uncertain. A deputy with a baton managed to climb up from behind. Marcus hurt his boots on metal and spun. The deputy swung wild, off balance on the uneven surface. Marcus blocked with his forearm, trapped his weapon arm, and used his forward momentum to throw him off the container. He crashed into 2 others below. "Use your firearms," Briggs screamed, losing composure. The sound of multiple holsters unsnapping echoed through the lot. Alexis was already moving. She ran along the container's edge as the first shots cracked out, bullets sparking off metal. At the corner, he grabbed a hanging chain and swung down, putting the container between him and the armed deputies. In the shadows underneath, he found a chain he'd kicked away earlier. Wrapping one end around his fist, he waited as boots approached from both sides. The deputies were moving more cautiously now, coordinating their attacks. A baton thrust into the darkness, trying to flush him out. Marcus caught it with the chain, yanked hard, and disarmed its owner. Another deputy dove under the container with a pipe raised. Marcus redirected his strike into the metal above, the impact numbing his hands. Shouts and curses filled the air as more deputies converged. Marcus rolled out from his cover, chain whipping out to tangle one deputy's legs. He pitched forward as Marcus rose, using him as a shield against the others. When 2 rushed him together, he pushed his captive into them and spun away. The fight shifted through pools of light and shadow. Marcus moved constantly, never letting them pin him down. He used the terrain ruthlessly, slamming attackers into containers, tripping them over debris, forcing them to bunch up in narrow spaces where they hindered each other. The rookie finally worked up his courage and charged with a length of pipe. Marcus disarmed him almost gently, then pushed him away. "Stay down," he advised. "This isn't your fight." The young man scrambled back, eyes wide with fear and relief. Briggs was shouting himself hoarse, trying to coordinate his remaining forces. Half his deputies were already down, nursing broken bones, twisted joints, or simply unwilling to rise. The others were hesitating, their confidence shattered. Marcus vaulted onto a wrecked car, chains still gripped in one hand. 2 deputies rushed his position from opposite sides. He flipped down between them just as they swung, their weapons passing through empty air where he had been. His boots hit concrete as their momentum carried them forward, and their weapons collided with brutal force, sending both deputies staggering. Marcus swept their legs with a low spin, leaving them groaning on the concrete. He rolled to his feet in the center of the impound lot, where flickering floodlights cast shifting shadows across the 8 remaining deputies. "Form up," Briggs bellowed from behind his men. "Don't let him pick you off." The deputies moved into a loose semicircle, brandishing an array of weapons. 2 held service pistols at low ready, 3 gripped metal pipes or batons. Another pair had heavy chains, and one clutched a length of rebar torn from construction debris. Marcus's breath came steady despite the exertion. His eyes tracked each opponent, measuring distances and angles. A broken side mirror from a wrecked car glinted by his foot. He kicked it up casually, catching it by the plastic backing. "Last warning," he called out. "Drop your weapons and walk away." One deputy with a pistol fired without warning. Marcus was already moving, the mirror flashing up to catch the muzzle flash. The bullet sparked off the glass, fragmenting harmlessly. Before the deputy could adjust his aim, Marcus flung the mirror shard like a throwing star. It sliced across his hand, making him drop the gun with a yelp. Two chain-wielding deputies attacked from opposite sides, trying to tangle his limbs. Marcus dropped and rolled as metal links whistled overhead. He came up with the length of rebar, blocked one chain wrap, and trapped the other against the ground. A sharp tug pulled both deputies off balance. "Behind you!" Briggs shouted. A baton swung for his head. Marcus brought the rebar up in a precise block. The impact shattered the wooden batten, sending splinters flying. He reversed his grip and drove the rebar's end into the deputy's chest, knocking him back, gasping. The second gunman tried to circle for a clear shot. Marcus grabbed the nearest deputy and threw him bodily through a car's windshield. The glass exploded outward, forcing the gunman to shield his eyes. Marcus closed the distance in that split second, stripped his weapon, and cracked the grip across his jaw. "She's not human," someone shouted. "Shut up and fight," Briggs roared. The remaining deputies attacked as one, desperation making them reckless. Marcus moved through their assault like water through rocks. A pipe glanced off his shoulder. He caught it, twisted, and sent its wielder sprawling. A chain wrapped his forearm. He yanked its owner into a knee strike that left him retching. Every movement was precise, controlled, but relentless. He used their own weapons against them, turned their attacks into openings. A deputy swung high with rebar. Marcus ducked under, caught his wrist, and guided the metal bar into another attacker's knee. Both went down screaming. The fight spread across the lot as deputies stumbled back, tried to regroup, then charged again. Marcus never stayed still, using the terrain to control engagement distances. He vaulted a hood when they tried to surround him, kicked off a container wall to avoid a wild chain swing, rolled under a pipe strike to sweep another deputy's legs. Sweat gleamed on his skin, but his breathing remained measured. The deputies were gasping, cursing with effort and pain. Their attacks grew wilder, less coordinated. Fear replaced anger in their eyes as he systematically dismantled their numerical advantage. A deputy rushed him with a length of pipe. Marcus caught it mid-swing, twisted it free, and dropped him with his own weapon. Another tried to tackle him from behind. Marcus used his momentum to throw him into a stack of tires. He landed in a tangle of rubber, too dazed to rise. The remaining deputies began backing away, looking to Briggs for guidance. Their lieutenant stood rigid with fury, watching his elite crew fall apart. Years of unchallenged authority crumbled with each defeated officer. Two deputies tried a coordinated attack, one high and one low. Marcus timed his response perfectly, caught the high strike, redirected it into the low attacker, then dropped both with quick strikes to vulnerable points. They collapsed, clutching bruised joints and muscles. Another deputy charged with a roar, swinging a heavy chain. Marcus stepped inside his guard, blocked his arm against his body, and delivered 3 precise hits to nerve clusters. The chain slipped from nerveless fingers as the deputy dropped to his knees. The last standing deputy, the one who'd fired first, retrieved his dropped pistol. His hand shook as he raised it. Marcus was already moving. He closed the distance before the deputy could aim, trapped his gun arm, and applied careful pressure to his wrist. The weapon clattered to the ground as tendons stretched to their limit. "Please," the deputy gasped. "Don't." Marcus released him with a small push. He stumbled back, then turned and ran into the darkness beyond the floodlights. The sound of his boots faded into the night. Marcus stood in the center of the lot, surrounded by groaning, defeated deputies. Some clutched injured limbs. Others lay still, conscious but unwilling to rise. The ground was littered with dropped weapons, chains, pipes, broken batons, and scattered debris. His chest rose and fell with steady breaths as he took in the scene. Despite the intense combat, his movements remained fluid, controlled. He had fought with precision rather than anger, dismantling their assault with tactical efficiency. The floodlights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows across the battlefield. In their unsteady glow, Briggs stood alone, his face twisted with rage and fear as he gripped a steel pipe in white-knuckled hands. The weapon trembled slightly, betraying his terror as he faced the man who had just defeated his entire crew. Briggs let out an animalistic roar and charged forward, the steel pipe whistling through the air in wild, desperate swings. His face was contorted with rage and fear, spittle flying as he screamed incoherently. The floodlights caught the metal's dull gleam as it sliced toward Marcus's head. Marcus shifted his weight slightly, letting the pipe pass within inches of his face. The breeze from its passage barely stirred his hair. Briggs stumbled forward, thrown off balance by his own momentum and fury. "Stand still and fight," he bellowed, recovering for another swing. Marcus remained centered, tracking his movements with practiced ease. "You're done, Lieutenant." "Drop it." Briggs responded with another wild assault, the pipe cutting violent arcs through the air. Each swing grew more erratic than the last, his technique degrading into pure desperation. Marcus weaved through the attacks, his movements economical and precise. "You ruined everything," Briggs screamed. The pipe crashed against a nearby container when Marcus sidestepped, sending metallic echoes across the lot. "Years of control, respect. Gone because of you. Respect." Marcus's voice remained level despite the lethal dance. "You mean fear? That's all you ever had." Briggs swung the pipe in a vicious horizontal strike. This time, instead of evading, Marcus stepped into his guard. His forearm caught the pipe mid-swing, trapping it against his body. The impact was jarring, but his technique absorbed the force perfectly. Briggs tried to wrench the weapon free, but Marcus had already secured his grip. He shifted his weight, applying targeted pressure with his forearm braced against the pipe's length. The metal groaned, then snapped with a sharp crack that echoed off the surrounding containers. Before Briggs could release his end, Marcus flowed into a joint lock. His hands found precise pressure points as he controlled the lieutenant's wrist and elbow. Briggs tried to resist, but physics and leverage were absolute. "No," Briggs started to say. Marcus completed the motion. There was a wet popping sound as his elbow dislocated, followed by a distinct crack as the arm broke cleanly. Briggs's scream cut through the night air. He dropped to his knees, cradling his ruined arm. "You crazy," he choked out through clenched teeth. "I'd think carefully about your next words," Marcus said quietly. He maintained the joint lock with one hand, ensuring Briggs stayed down. "Federal agents are recording everything now." Briggs's head snapped up. Through the pain sweat on his face, he saw the moment he registered the new arrivals. Investigator Cross stood at the lot's entrance with several FBI agents, their weapons drawn. More importantly, multiple cameras and recording devices were pointed directly at the scene. "This is your one chance," Marcus continued, applying subtle pressure to remind Briggs of his position. "Confess. All of it. The traffic stop setup, the evidence tampering, the coordination with the private prisons. Everything. I don't know what you're—" Briggs cut off with a gasp as Marcus shifted his grip slightly. "Wrong answer." Marcus's voice remained steady. "Let's start with the dash cam footage you deleted. Walk us through exactly how that happened." Briggs tried to squirm free, but the joint lock was absolute. Sweat ran down his face as he looked frantically between Marcus and the advancing federal agents. His resistance crumbled. "Fine," he spat. "I ordered the footage erased. Had a tech wipe the whole system to cover our tracks. And the reason for the initial stop?" Briggs's laugh was bitter, tinged with pain. "We target them all. Anyone black in a nice car gets stopped, searched, arrested if possible. Keeps the private facilities full. Keeps the kickbacks flowing." "Who else is involved?" Cross called out as he approached, recorder extended. "Half the department. Judge Maxwell. That ain't notice." Briggs's words tumbled out now, his composure shattered. They all get their cut. Been running it for years. Marcus maintained the hold as Cross moved closer, documenting every detail. Around them, federal agents were securing the conscious deputies, reading rights and applying cuffs. Medical teams began arriving to treat the more seriously injured officers. "And my daughter?" Marcus asked quietly. "The false arrest?" Briggs grimaced. "Thought we could pressure you to back off. Should have known better. Should have seen what you were when you dropped my men that first day." Red and blue lights began strobing across the lot as more law enforcement vehicles arrived. The flashing colors painted surreal patterns across the scattered weapons and fallen deputies. Evidence teams moved in, photographing and documenting the scene. "That's enough for now," Cross said, stopping the recording. He nodded to nearby agents. "Take him." Two FBI agents approached with cuffs. Marcus released the joint lock smoothly, stepping back as they secured Briggs. The lieutenant swayed on his knees, pale and sweating, as they recited his rights. "This isn't over," Briggs snarled as they pulled him to his feet. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." "Actually," Cross said, "we have exactly what we need. Your confession, plus the evidence we've gathered. Your entire network is done." They began leading Briggs away. His composure cracked completely as the reality of his situation hit home. He started screaming, hurling threats and obscenities that echoed off the containers. Marcus stood motionless, watching as they dragged him toward a waiting vehicle. The flashing emergency lights cast alternating shadows across his face. He remained silent, his expression neutral as Briggs's shouts faded into the night. Around him, the impound lot had transformed into a full crime scene. Evidence markers dotted the ground. Photographers documented the fallen deputies and scattered weapons. Federal agents moved with purpose, securing suspects and gathering testimony. The corrupt system Briggs had built was being dismantled piece by piece under the strobing lights. Morning light streamed through the tall windows of the federal building, casting long shadows across the polished floor. Marcus sat in Investigator Cross's office, a cup of untouched coffee growing cold on the desk before him. Harper Lane sat beside him, legal papers spread across her lap, while Cross leaned against his desk with a satisfied expression. "The dominoes are falling fast," Cross said, holding up a fresh report. Briggs's confession opened the floodgates. Deputies are turning on each other, everyone trying to cut a deal before it's too late. Harper nodded, rifling through her documents. "The evidence is overwhelming. Briggs, Dawson, and Riker are facing multiple federal civil rights violations. The conspiracy charges alone carry decades of prison time." "What about the others?" Marcus asked, his voice steady. "The DA submitted his resignation this morning," Cross replied. "Didn't even try to fight it. Judge Maxwell is under investigation by the Judicial Review Board. The sheriff's entire command structure is being dismantled." Marcus took a slow breath, processing the rapid changes. Just days ago, these men had seemed untouchable, protected by their badges and a corrupt system. Now, they were falling like playing cards in a strong wind. "Your daughter's release papers were processed an hour ago," Harper added softly. "All charges have been expunged. The county is already talking settlement to avoid a lawsuit." A tight knot in Marcus's chest finally began to loosen. His daughter's false arrest had been the cruelest part of Briggs's retaliation. How was the restructuring looking? "The FBI is overseeing a complete overhaul," Cross explained. "New leadership, new training protocols, external oversight committees. They're using this case as a template for reforming other troubled departments." He pulled up a news website on his computer monitor, turning it so Marcus could see. The headlines were a stark contrast to the smear campaign of just days before. "Delta Force Commandée expose police corruption. Hero veteran stands up to systemic abuse. Corrupt officers face federal charges." "Public opinion has shifted completely," Harper said. "You're being hailed as a whistleblower who exposed decades of institutional racism and abuse of power. People are calling for national reforms based on your experience." Marcus skimmed the articles, seeing his own story reflected back in a new light. The truth had finally broken through the wall of lies Briggs had built. "That's actually why we called you in today," Cross said, straightening up. "The Justice Department is forming a special task force to review and reform use of force standards across the country." He paused. "They want you to head it." Marcus looked up sharply. "Me?" Harper smiled. "Who better? You have the military background, the tactical expertise, and now first-hand experience with police abuse of power. You can speak to both sides of the equation. Your unique perspective could help reshape how law enforcement approaches conflict resolution," Cross added. "Help prevent other departments from becoming what Briggs created here." Marcus stood and walked to the window, looking out over the city. The morning sun caught the glass of distant buildings, making them shine like beacons. He thought about that night on the highway, when 2 patrol cars had targeted him simply for being black in an expensive vehicle. How many others had faced similar abuse without his training and resources to fight back? "The position would give you real authority to implement changes," Harper continued. "Set new training standards, establish accountability measures, create proper oversight systems. You could help ensure no one else has to go through what you and your daughter experienced," Cross said quietly. Marcus turned back to face them, his expression resolute. "When do they need an answer?" "They're announcing the task force next week," Cross replied. "But they're willing to wait for you if you need time to consider." "I don't," Marcus said firmly. "This is exactly the kind of mission I'm trained for. Identifying threats, developing countermeasures, protecting civilians. The battlefield has just shifted." Harper beamed. "I was hoping you'd say that. I already have the paperwork ready." They spent the next hour reviewing documents and discussing initial priorities. The scope of the task force was ambitious, but Marcus felt energized by the challenge. This was a chance to create lasting change. As they wrapped up the meeting, Cross's phone buzzed. He checked the message and smiled. "Your daughter's processing is complete. She's waiting in the lobby." Marcus gathered his things quickly. The 3 of them rode the elevator down together, emerging into the bright marble lobby where Sarah Ward stood waiting. His daughter's face lit up at the sight of her father. They embraced tightly, neither speaking for a long moment. When they separated, both had tears in their eyes. "Ready to go home?" Marcus asked softly. She squeezed his hand. "More than ready." They walked together through the lobby's revolving doors, emerging onto the courthouse steps. The morning air was crisp and clean, carrying the promise of spring. News crews had gathered, but they kept a respectful distance, allowing the father and daughter their moment of peace. Marcus took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the past weeks finally lifting from his shoulders. The storm had passed. The corrupt system that had targeted them was being dismantled. More importantly, he now had the opportunity to prevent similar abuse from happening to others. His daughter seemed to read his thoughts. "You're going to take that task force position, aren't you?" "Yes," Marcus replied. "Someone needs to make sure what happened to us can't happen again." Sarah nodded proudly. "Then you better get to work. There's a lot of fixing to be done." They stood together in the morning sunlight, free at last from Briggs's shadow. The courthouse rose behind them like a massive stone guardian, no longer a symbol of corruption, but of justice restored. For Marcus, it marked not just an ending, but a new beginning, a chance to reshape the very system he had survived.